Paul Groth,
Yep.
Snowmobile Hall of Fame member. You have built an amazing machine here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've got a shop in Frontenac, Minnesota. You're standing in it. And this is a replica of the 1971 Boss Cat 1. Arctic built 3 of these massive machines, 1, 2, and 3. 2 and 3 are already in a museum and a private collection. And this one here is, I'm just finishing up with it, and it's almost ready to go. A little bit of cleanup, and it's ready for delivery. It's been down in my shop for about 8 years. I received a bare chassis, and what you see inside of it is what I put into it. So we're going to test fire this thing up. It's got a 4-cylinder Kawasaki King Cat engine from 1971, original style equipment, and it's got a 1,000 horsepower turbine that powers it for the main speed runs. The Kawasaki is only for maneuvering around the pits and getting the machine running up to about 30 miles an hour down the track. Then you hit the switch on the turbine. So let's try and fire this thing up.
Okay, Paul Groth, tell us about what you have built here. This is an incredibly unique and utterly fantastic machine. What is it? What are all these components?
Well, this is, to the best of our knowledge, this is what the original Boss Cat 1 looked like inside. There are no drawings. There are no bits, pieces, replications of anything, any place. So this was fabricated totally from the ground up, not only by me but other people, to as closely replicate Boss Cat 1. Boss Cat 1 was destroyed in a fire up at the Thief River headquarters, I believe back in 72 or 73, and was completely destroyed in a fire. It's powered by a 4-cylinder Kawasaki King Cat engine that's right here behind the seat firewall, and it uses a traditional clutch and secondary like what would have been on 1971 Arctic Cat. From there it goes to a belt drive, and I don't know why they used a belt, but I figured they probably didn't want a chain running too close to the fuel tank, which is here. But the 3 belt drives go here to a chain drive to the rear. There is a Sprague clutch inside of this so that when the turbine takes over, it will not spool up the 4-cylinder engine. So it'll override the 4-cylinder. The turbine is completely fabricated. It's not an original turbinique. There's very few of them made, and there's very few of them left. And what are left are very expensive. So I drew up the drawings, and the Warning family had them casted components like the transmission housing and the turbine housing. All the rest of the components were I hand machined. Some of the other components and stuff, the chain drives, everything is as close as we could get it to the factory drawings. And these are things that are off of the internet. People can see them every day. You have to guess at what things are, but the twin disc brakes are shown in there, and the double chain drive. There's twin chain cases, one on each side, that drive the track. It's a single track, 20 inches wide. And it's got a stabilizer bar, and then of course the exhaust for the turbine. The original turbine ran on normal propyl nitrate, and you'd have to have a hazmat license just to sniff it today. So this one runs on kerosene, jet fuel. So
you basically made this thing from the original plans and reference drawings, because there are no examples.
there are possibly some drawings by the wife of Denny Ray, who originally designed this machine, but she will not turn them loose. So we have hand fabricated all this stuff from drawings, or from the pictures. I mean, you can see it's just pictures, and not that great a quality, so the detail doesn't come through. But you have to know what makes the engine run. You have to have a fuel tank for the turbine. You have to have some sort of either a fuel pump, or in this case it's a pressurized fuel system. So we have a CO2 tank here pressurizing the fuel system to 150 psi. The fuel goes into a throttle body block and a solenoid, so that you can turn the fuel on and off and throttle it. And the oxygen, this turbine is unique because it does not have a compressor section. It has oxygen that is bottled. So it's oxygen and fuel are pumped into the turbine section, ignited, and out the back pipe.
Okay, you can kill it there, right? Paul, tell us about the cockpit of this amazing machine.
Well, from the drawings, we knew that there was several gauges and switches. We didn't know what they did. We know that the engine has to have a tachometer. The turbine has to have a tachometer. There's a fuel pressure gauge, and an oil pressure gauge, and oxygen pressure gauge. So that's what we came up with as far as, well, okay, it's got to have that. The first switch is the main power switch, and that brings on the power. If you're igniting the 4-cylinder, you just pull on the main power, and you pull on the 4-cylinder switch, and then go back to the starter and actually pull start the engine just like you would a normal 71 Arctic Cat. For starting the turbine, main power is on. You turn this knob to release oxygen into the turbine chamber. Then you pull on the ignition, and then you pull on the fuel. And when you pull on the fuel, the turbine will ignite, and then you can regulate it until it settles in with the amount of oxygen you need. Then you can throttle the turbine right here with the throttle lever. And normally, once the turbine is lit, just turn this for about a turn to get it full open, and then advance the throttle in, and away you go. To shut it down, you can just hit the fuel button and it stops immediately, and then you can hit the ignition and then master, and then turn off the oxygen.
Okay, kill it. So Paul, none of this really is commercially available, and you had to design and machine nearly everything here in your own machine shop. Can you talk a little bit about how you made these things?
Well, sure. I do have lathe and mill and welding capabilities at my shop. I pretty much can make anything I want. If I can dream it up, I can usually make it. The turbine housing was drawn up by me and then sent off to a casting place in Illinois, and they casted the turbine housing and the transmission housing. The tail cone and the drive housing was I machined this by hand with the aid of a CNC machine, and this was just a solid block of aluminum. We have a tachometer drive for the turbine. The transmission's inside. Actually, the transmission on this one is a planetary gear drive unit from a World War II starter motor for like a big Pratt & Whitney radial engine. They had a tremendous amount of gear reduction on them. So at 150,000 RPM on the turbine, you got about 8,000 RPMs on the output shaft. And it's geared probably for like 150 miles an hour as it sits. The raw castings were sent to me. I machined them according to what I needed. And like all of these pieces are just billet aluminum, bracketry, everything you see here. I tried to use things that would have been available in 1971 as much as I could. But as you can see, some of it is modern components because some of the stuff is just, you know, so antique you wouldn't want to use it anyway. The brake calipers are, there's actually two brake calipers. There's one here and there's one here. There's twin discs, and the rear axle, or the rear drive axle on this unit, goes up and down with the suspension. You can see the shocks here, and they're connected right to the chain cases, which go straight down to the rear axle of the drive for the track. Now that is suspended, so that means this shaft goes up and down. That means this tensioner actually rotates as the suspension goes up and down, and it keeps perfect tension on the chain at all times. And then we have the drive sprocket from the 4-cylinder engine, and of course the belt drives, which goes up to the shaft off of the secondary shaft off the 4-cylinder. And of course then we have the 4-cylinder King Cat engine inside, tucked away very nicely, almost impossible to adjust. It's perfect. So.
Okay, we are going to start.
Okay, we're going to start up the 4-cylinder, the King Cat engine. Turn on the main power and the ignition for the engine. And let's see if we get something here. Okay. Ready?
Paul, hanging above us is the body to the Bobcat. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the original one in 1971 was built by a shop up in North Dakota, and one of the people that was in the shop was an apprentice at the time. Made this one. I mean, you're talking 1971 to like 20, I think 2012. So the body is fiberglass. The mold, they made the mold, they made everything from pictures. There's no dimensions, there's no drawings of this thing anyplace. So everything you see here, all this glass work and everything, the windshield, everything is all hand fabricated. Wonderful job. I don't know who else could have pulled this thing off. The chassis was also built by somebody in I think it's Al Eno in his shop in North Dakota, and they did an excellent job of remaking this chassis. Again, from pictures. So, everything is probably not 100% perfect, but it's as close as we can get to it, and we're going to stick to that.